And we're live. Scott Furr, welcome to Enter the Unknown. So glad to have you on as a guest.
Hey, how you doing?
Owner, founder of kitemaine.com. It's really cool how we first met, actually, kind of through the kiting adventure world. I had no idea that you're the local legend status, so to speak, as it were, here in kiting in Maine, and you own the big local school. And I just saw you out wing skating, ice winging one day through my window here, living on the lake. And I said to my partner, Molly, I have to do that. I ran out there essentially to come meet you, and it was a really cool way to get connected and come to find out that like you're the man when it comes to kiting in Maine. And
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your path with just starting Kite Maine.
So I'm passionate about kite surfing specifically, but I'm also into, all things wind powered, ice winging, the kite surfing. I used to be a big windsurfer. Started off sailing. I guess that's kind of where it all began. When I was 12, I went to a Boy Scout camp and I signed up to do my sailing merit badge. And that I was 12 and I was out on the water and the wind picked up and the gust of wind started propelling me forward and I was able to lean back and let the wind catch my sail. And there was something about that moment that was just super powerful. And I felt kind of, that, spiritual connection is, if you want to say, it was almost kind of my first kind of real spiritual experience was having the wind, fill my sails and I was hooked ever since. That started a long trajectory of, I grew up watching, pirate movies and I built ship models in and that really kickstarted my love of the wind and water. And I ended up going off to college to study naval architecture and marine engineering because I love boats and I had this dream that I was going to build America's Cup racing yachts and
Wow.
yeah, in the thick of all that. And I slowly learned that that's a tough road, and it doesn't pay very well, and it's also just you got to be, you know, top of the class and brilliant to go down that path. And I ended up graduating, and I ended up doing commercial ship design instead, which wasn't as exciting. But my wife was in med school at the time, and we got her through med school, and so I was into boats from the beginning. So I started. Sorry, I can go back. I guess my dad was a big windsurfer too, so he kind of
Okay.
introduced me to windsurfing. But when I was young, but I was a small, scrawny kid, and back then the windsurfing gear weighed a ton, and I wasn't very good at it. So I went off to this college in New York for naval architecture and marine engineering, and they had a boathouse right on Long Island Sound, full of unused windsurfing equipment, and I was like, I kind of know how to do that, and I started, you know, popping down on the water and quickly picked it up again. And, the rest was history from there. I became a full on windsurfing junkie. And every opportunity I had, I would go windsurf. And it was great because our school was right on Long Island Sound. I could walk from my dorm room down to the boathouse in 3 minutes, and we'd leave our sails rig, and I could go windsurfing pretty much any time for those 4 years that I was there. And it was a great opportunity, and I started teaching friends and got totally hooked. Eventually, most people, live in a van and go off and do adventurous stuff. I got married 6 days after I graduated undergrad college,
Wow.
22. I moved from Long Island to Brooklyn, New York with my wife. She was in her last year of med school, and I started as a naval architect in New Manhattan. So I was right into it, but on the side, I still windsurfed when I could. I used to store my stuff down by Coney Island at a boat club, a yacht club, and I would take the subway down to Coney Island, rollerblade to the yacht club, rig up my stuff, and then tack out to Plum Beach and windsurf as much as I could, and then come back and take the subway home. So I had a whole system down, but I eventually also got my U.S. Sailing windsurfing instructor certification. So I started teaching just kind of just for fun, nothing real formal. But I just loved sharing my passion for the sport.
Mm.
Um, I guess in 2002, my wife and I went to Cabaret for a um, windsurfing vacation, and
It's in
kite
the
surfing was
Dominican
very much.
Republic, Cabaret.
What'd you say?
That's in the Dominican Republic, Cabaret.
Yeah, Dominican Republic. I went to Cabaret on the North Shore of the Dominican Republic, and we went there for a windsurfing vacation. And kite surfing was very new to the scene at that point. And I, had seen it out on the water, and I was like, maybe I should give it a shot. So I signed up for a 3-day lesson. And back then, the kite surfing equipment was very, very new. There was no safety mechanisms. There was no depower. There was no safety releases. It was just you either did it right or you got dragged down the beach. And granted, I was a little bit hungover, I think, but
no safety gear.
Yeah, no, it was a little sketchy. And so granted, I was a little hungover, I think, the first lesson, and I tried it, and it just felt really sketchy, and I just didn't get good vibes about it. And I'd been windsurfing at that point for quite a while, and I was like, I'm just going to stick to windsurfing. I kind of set it aside for a while, and then actually I returned in 2012 to Cabaret with my father and my brother. I think it was my dad's 60th birthday, I believe. And my younger brother, in the meantime, had gotten drawn into kite surfing down in the Boston area and gotten hooked. And so he's like, "You got to try it again. It's super fun." And so I signed up for a lesson, and the rest is kind of history from there. I came back to Maine, and I kind of, again, it was fairly new. I was probably one of the few people actually kite surfing in Maine at the time. So I didn't have any help, or there's no YouTube videos about how to do it right. So it was a lot of trial and error. And eventually I picked it up, got a little better, and I transitioned from windsurfing all the time to kite surfing all the time. And I think I windsurf maybe twice a year now. And the windsurfing was really, really loved it. Was passionate about it, but our winds in Maine are not that strong, and so I found that I was able to have a lot more fun and ride more often with a kite because you just don't need as much wind to have fun kite surfing. Plus, it's more portable. It's a little easier to set up and tear down, and then eventually I learned how to jump and got very hooked. So I went full on to kite surfing, and then I guess maybe people were always asking me, where can I learn this? Where can I do this? And part of the issue in Maine is the beaches get very crowded in the summer, so we were always concerned about too many people, maybe an accident happen. And I've heard of other beaches, kite surfing being banned. So we were very cautious about, our territory of letting people come and kite surf. But it was a very collaborative community. The kite surfing community is very, works together and looks out for each other. So eventually I decided that, I would rather have people kite safely than trying to come down and figure it out on their own. And it was going to happen whether I taught people or not. People were going to try to kite surf. So I decided to start teaching about 3 years ago. Maine is not the best place to learn to kite surf. I'll be honest. It's a tough place to learn because it's so inconsistent. It's a great place to do it, but it's not a great place necessarily to kite surf. Because of that. So, I give somebody a lesson and it may be 2 or 3 weeks before they get another lesson. And not having the continuity is really difficult with this particular sport because it really helps to have, kind of back-to-back lessons to accelerate the learning process. So I often will tell people, hey, go to the Caribbean, go down to, somewhere warm, take 3 or 4 days, and then come back and we'll get you comfortable kiting in Maine because Maine is a unique place to kite in itself. But I have a lot of my students actually come back, just needing, 1 or 2 more lessons to kind of get over the hump to be comfortable and safe on their own. And our big goal is just to get people to be safe, riding safely, so they're not going to hurt themselves or somebody on the beach. And then it's just a matter of getting on the water. And so I've always loved teaching. I found that I really enjoy sharing this passion I have for kite surfing with others. And so it's been really great to be able to do that. It's very seasonal, of course. So I have lots of other side gigs to keep me busy so that I can teach kite surfing when the wind comes up.
Yeah. Oh man, what a journey! It sounds like you kind of went through the whole evolution of the sport with your own personal evolution. I know myself, I get excited about sports like this and learning about all the gear and the equipment and the technology and how the technology advances. And you referenced like kites and kiteboarding being a lot more portable than windsurfing, and a big paraglider. And I always kind of make it analogous to like hang gliding and paragliding, where hang gliding was huge in like the 70s, and it was a big aluminum frame, and you needed a truck to get it around, and you need higher wind. and then kind of paragliding came to fruition and started evolving, and it was a lot more portable. You could fly in light water winds, and I think kiting and windsurfing seem very similar in that way. And so you said you still windsurf like a little bit, and is it just like totally passe now? Like, are there still like crusty old timers who are diehard windsurfers and
There's
only
still a few
windsurf?
out
Is it
there.
like that?
There's still a few of us out there. It's definitely fallen off. I mean, kitesurfing has definitely taken the mainstream. Water sports. I think it's one of the fastest growing water sports in the world for many years in a row.
Yeah.
So it really took off. There's still a few of us around, and I have some gear that's not worth a lot, but every now and then when it's really really windy, the reality is kite surfing is just so much easier, and I can jump 40 feet on a kite with a kite surfer, and I can't do that with a windsurfer. And
Oh, totally.
I've become kind of an adrenaline junkie because of the sport, more so than I ever was growing up. So
Yeah. Oh man, with all the apps now too, and tracking
yeah,
jump distance and jump height, and how far you go and how far you tack, and
yeah.
it's a fun way to kind of quantify the extremeness of like a single little trip out on the water. You kind of shared a little bit of a story with me. You did like a 100-mile day once in Cape Cod, 7 hours or something. Tell me about that big
Yeah,
journey.
so one thing that happens with water sports, wind sports particularly, is people do what's called a downwinder. So you plan ahead, you park your car downwind of where you start. So you pick a point on land, and then you start off upwind, and with sailing, a lot of time you spend tacking back and forth and getting upwind to stay in position from where you started, so you can always return to where you started. But it takes a lot of work, and going downwind, you can kind of just let loose. You don't have to worry so much about edging hard to get upwind. You can just kind of enjoy the ride. And so downwinders are really fun because you spend more time just goofing off and enjoying the wind, and not so much focusing on trying to return to where you started. And so I guess this is 2023. My buddies and I decided we were going to go down to Cape Cod because the wind forecast was really good, and we started out in at Calms Beach, and we actually tacked up to Hannesport breakwater, and then we proceeded to kite down the coast of Cape Cod all the way to Chatham, and that's where we'd left a vehicle, and we took a quick break, had a quick snack, and then we proceeded to go out on the Monomoy Preserve, which if you don't know where that is, it's kind of south of the elbow of Cape Cod. So it's also a
Okay.
notorious place for sharks. It's also one of the most unique places I've ever kited in by far. It's like being in a Star Wars, desert scene sometimes. It's just surreal. These giant dunes everywhere. There's not any people in sight. It's a big nature preserve with just millions and millions of birds and fish and sharks. But the beauty of it is it's basically a giant sandbar, and it's not very deep. So we'll go out pretty far. I think that day we went out maybe, I don't know, it's probably three-quarters of the way out on this Monomoy Peninsula, which is probably, I want to say, 3 or 4 miles out into the ocean. But the key is you just don't go anywhere you can't see the bottom.
Mhm.
And so you stay in the shallows, and say most of the time we're kiting in 6 to 12 inches of water, and it's just sunny and beautiful and windy, and we had 6 of us that day, I believe, and so we spent I think we did 101 miles that day, 7 hours on the water, and it was quite an adventure. But there's something that happens when you do kind of these extreme sports with people, as you probably know, that it creates a bond with people. You share this this beautiful experience. It's exhilarating. It's stunningly beautiful. We're taking turns jumping, seeing who can jump the highest, or someone will take a break on the sandbar, and then the other guys will come by and try to do the biggest trick in front of your buddies. So there's
Yeah,
just this
yeah.
bonding experience that happens when you do an extreme sport, especially somewhere beautiful. And so it was a great memory that we had. We talk about it to this day. The epic downwinder on Cape Cod, and I think I made a YouTube video of it somewhere online, and it was just a really fun adventure. We, every now and then we'll try to plan a big adventure like that, because it's just something about exploring with, going to your local beach and going back and forth is fun, but there's something really exciting about exploring a new area or going down a coastline to a new destination. So I'm very much into the exploratory kiting. I really find that kind of exhilarating and fun, and it adds just another element to the sport.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time, kiting up in the marsh on high tide and exploring all the channels, or I'll do a downwinder, to a different part of the coast of Maine, and it's just really fun to explore with a kite. So I call it kite touring almost. So
Kite touring. I love it. What a rad adventure.
yeah,
Yeah, likewise, I really appreciate that element of any kind of adventure, going and doing the long distance out and back. And, I wonder, like, well, first I want to back up. Why do you only go where you can see the bottom? You said you don't go where you can't see the
well,
bottom.
mainly because of the sharks. You don't want to, we're
Because the
nervous about
sharks.
the sharks, and if you can see the bottom, you can see a shark. And also, I don't know where I heard this, but a marine biologist acquaintance of mine told me that sharks need at least 50 feet to do that surprise attack thing where they mistake you as a seal. So
Oh,
my
interesting.
my theory is that as long as you stay in the shallows, there's less likely chance of a shark attack.
Oh,
I don't
great.
think
That's
people
some
have ever been.
classic like marine biologist bro science there. If the water's not too deep, the sharks won't do the porpoise attack on
Yeah,
you.
that's
Wow, what a
again.
fun element of a wild adventure to like have that in the back of your head. It's like I could crash, I could get stuck, this could happen, that could happen, but also a shark could attack me.
Yeah. Well, and then while you're kiting around on the Atlantic side of this Monomoy Preserve, which we kind of go near, you can see just hundreds of these giant elephant seals and gray seals, and they're just everywhere. The sharks follow the seals, so you try to avoid the large patches of areas of where the seals are hanging out too, because you don't want to be
Yeah,
mistaken
totally.
as a
Yeah,
seal.
you can
So,
kind of pick out little biodiversity zones where they're likely to be feeding or something.
mm,
Man, so rad. And so tell me a bit about winging. And I never quite know what to say or how to say it to people, like ice winging, skate winging, snow winging. People in the kiting world get it, wingdings out there and that kind of thing.
yeah,
But for the people who don't, tell me a little bit about just the new technology, what it
yeah.
means to
So
be like flying a wing.
yeah, so after kite surfing kind of took off, another sport has kind of slowly become popular behind it. It's called wing foiling, and a lot of people are using basically what it looks like a handheld kite essentially, and they go out on the water and they use what's a hydrofoil board. So it has it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a combination. It's almost very similar to windsurfing, to be honest,
Mhm.
but you don't have the long strings and the bar attached to you, so there's less risk of being like lofted up into the air and being inadvertently getting yourself hurt. So it's a little more low risk, and it's a little more accessible to folks. You also don't need a big launch area to do it, so you can do it, on a lake or somewhere, where there's trees. Whereas a kite, you need a big space to land and launch a kite safely. So winging has kind of taken off recently, and it's very popular in Maine. I am honestly not a big wing foiler. I've only done it twice, but I have found that because we have so much ice in Maine, that wing skating has become a real passion of mine.
Yeah.
Um, I'll be honest. If I can be on a twin tip board, which looks like a wakeboard, and a kite, I'll do that pretty much any day I can. But when it's too cold or the ice is good, then we have, I fall back on the wing skating, and that's where you and I met out on the ice at Highland Lake. But it's great. If you know how to ice skate, you can pump up one of these wings, and in 10 minutes, I can teach you how to do it, and you can be flying around on the ice. And typically, ice skating isn't fun when it's windy. And so this has been a great
Yeah.
thing for folks, because it suddenly makes, windy days on the ice a lot of fun, because, the wing will carry you all over the place. And we've done wing touring on the ice too. My buddy and I, one time we went up to Long Lake up in Naples, Maine, and we wing skated from Naples up to Harrison, Maine. Um, Took off our skates, went into the local market, had some pizza, and then we downwinded all the way back to our car. I think it ended up being 50 miles on the ice that day. It's just a
Wow.
really fun adventure, and for those of who aren't in Maine, some winters we just get black ice that covers the whole lake, and so you have these just stunningly beautiful scenes of basically skating on a mirror, And then imagine going, anywhere from 20 to 35 or even 40 miles an hour across the ice with the wind power. There's no noise, there's no motors. It's just super peaceful and super exhilarating and super exciting. And it's also just very easy. The wind dies, you just carry the thing back with you to shore. And so it's a very accessible, easy, fun way for people to kind of experience wind power and the exhilaration of being pulled around on it. So I started selling wings, and I do a lot of wing demos in the wintertime, and usually I just go to wherever I'm going to do it, and I have a bunch of wings in my car, and usually 1 in 4 people who tries it buys one on the spot. And you bought one on the spot because you fell in love with it.
Sure did.
It's just an easy way to enjoy the ice and the wind. It's just a great winter complementary sport to what I do.
Stokes Picks are the world's first organically flavored nicotine toothpicks. Produced in the great state of Maine from American white birch wood, which is sustainably harvested and grown in the great state of Maine. They have incredible flavors: vanilla mint, lemon ginger, cinnamon clove, and absinthe. And if you enter the promo code Enter the Unknown, you'll receive 20% off your order at stokespicks.com.
But at the end of the day, if I get out on the water, if it's above 27 degrees Fahrenheit is my threshold. If it's above 27, I'll go kite surf on the water. If it's colder, then I go to the ice.
27 degrees. Why is that the threshold?
So I'll have to at 27. What happens, especially in the ocean, you start to get the spray from coming off the water, from going through the water will start to collect on your bar and your lines, and you get icing on your bar and lines. And if you were to drop your kite in the water, it would probably ice up, icing of a wing kind of type thing. So you lose some performance, and then eventually it just becomes unsafe because you can't pull your safety and you have ice caked up on your bar. And you can dunk it and thaw it out for a few minutes and go for a little bit longer, and at some point it just is darn cold and you could pick up activities. But
man, that's kind of insane, honestly.
So I had a picture of me and some of my buddies. We're just caked with ice that winter. I think we had like an inch of ice just covering us. It was really wild.
Oh man, I love that. I mean, I do like the cold a lot, but I'm probably going ice climbing before I'm going kiteboarding when it's sub 30.
Well, and that's why the ice wing is attractive. You're not getting wet, so you're not nearly as cold when you're not wet. So I find that as long as you just stay warm on the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's such a great experience. All the different wind sports and all the different, let's call them toys. Let's call them what they are here. Cause I like to say equipment, and act like it's this real serious thing, but we're out there having fun playing with our toys. And the wing has been a totally new element for me, and the wing skating. I'm really tuned up now thinking about the wing touring, right? You did this 50-miler, you're saying, like, wow, what a rad adventure, Throw a wallet and a bottle of water in a backpack and just go as far as you can. Because like you said, the lakes in Maine, some of them are just endless.
Yeah. Well, and it's just the thing I love, I've been in Maine for about 19 years now, and it's just a beautiful place. And the thing about the ice, it's really, my buddies and I will go out a lot of times at sunrise or sunset, because you just get the most amazing light, and it can be like it's almost like you're doing something in an alternate planet sometimes. It's just so beautiful, so surreal. You get the sun shining down on a big sheet of black ice, and you're drag racing with your buddies across the ice. It's pretty fabulous. It's pretty exhilarating, and it's pretty magical. So it's a fun. It's hard to not get excited about it.
But yeah, man, it's so fun thinking about all the sports. And you grew up on the West Coast, is that right?
Yeah,
that's where you learned about sailing, came back. And what actually brought you back to Maine?
Well, I grew up in Oregon, a little mountain town called Sandy, Oregon, on the base of Mount Hood. It was a really nothing town. We kind of grew up poor. I spent my childhood, our vacations were camping or going to visit grandparents in California. But my dad did get into windsurfing. That kind of started some of it. And then in high school, like I said, I got into sailing. I owned a couple sailboats at various times. I joined a sailing club on the Willamette River, and it was great. I could just go down after school, and I had the boat right there, and they slide it right into the river and go sailing on the river. And it's just really fun and easy. And I tried to get out on the water as much as I could. Um, where was I going with that?
What got you to Maine?
Oh, so I decided if you haven't gathered, I'm kind of a nerd. I was a pretty straight laced straight A kid. I grew up Mormon, all things. I was pretty pretty straight line kid, but I ended up getting straight A's, and I thought I was going to do architect. I thought I was going to be an architect, and I eventually found out you could do architecture in boats, naval architecture, and I was like, hey, this is amazing. This is a great fit for me. I think at the time there was 4 schools in the United States. I think MIT, Michigan, Berkeley, and Webb Institute, where I ended up ultimately going. Were the only 4 programs in the United States that had the naval architecture program. I got waitlisted at MIT and Michigan, and I got into Webb, which actually was the hardest of the 3 to get into. I got into Berkeley as well, but they canceled the naval architecture program the year I got in. It wasn't big enough, so they discontinued it. So I got into Webb Institute, which is a really unique college on the North Shore of Long Island. There's only about 100 students in the whole college, and they have one degree. Everyone who goes there takes the same classes and gets the same degree. You get a dual degree in naval architecture and marine engineering. So you learn to design ships, and it's full ride for everyone who goes there. So being not from a lot of means and not having a lot of money, it was either University of Oregon or this free ride to this unique college in New York. And so I packed up everything I had and I moved across the country, not knowing a single person, and jumped into this very intense college program. And it was not a fun college experience as most people had. I think we had 25 credit hours a semester, and it was a fixed curriculum. There weren't electives, and so it was it was harder to get out than it was to get in. I think my class started with 24, 25, and I think we only graduated 13. So it was
Wow.
a really a tough school to get through, but I got through somehow with a lot of help from friends, and and I went into the naval architecture field. I took a job in Manhattan when I was 22, and I started designing commercial ships, tankers, container ships. I did some crane barges for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I was the guy who did the calculations that made sure the boat floated properly and wouldn't tip over in a storm. So that was my job, was mainly to do the stability calculations for various ships that were being designed and built.
Yeah.
To be honest, I was kind of bored. It was kind of a dying field at the time, especially in New York City. A lot of the shipbuilding had shifted to the shipyards in New Orleans or Newport News, Virginia, or San Diego. And so a lot of times I was kind of sitting at my desk trying to be excited about what I was doing. A lot of times we'd take an existing design, tweak it to the customer's needs, and spit it back out. And there's very little creativity. And to be honest, I was kind of bored with it. Kind of wrong place, wrong time kind of thing. I think if I'd been at a shipyard, I would have been way more into it. So I did that for about 8 years. I followed my wife around. My wife's a physician, so she was doing her medical training. We landed in Pittsburgh. We were in Brooklyn for 4 years. Then we went to Pittsburgh for 3. And then my wife finished all her training, and we decided to settle down in Maine. And my in-laws moved here in 2000, and we always came here to visit Christmas. And we said, there's no way we're ever moving here. It's freezing. But here we are. We've been here almost 19 years, and we love it. It's been a great place to raise our kids, and it's a really unique place. It's not for everybody, but if you like the outdoors and you like to own a lot of gear, it's a really fun place to do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So it wasn't like anything, no big catalyst. It was like Maine just kind of called you in and reeled you in. You already had the East Coast connection. Your folks are coming up here, and you decided this is the place you wanted to sell.
Yeah. So we just kind of picked it. It was a great job opportunity for my wife. She's a pediatric gastroenterologist, and it was a unique opportunity for her. We had my in-laws were in Portland, and actually my mother and my stepfather live in Boston now, and I have a brother in Boston. So we kind of have an East Coast contention, and kind of made sense to settle down out here. And we also just big beach people. We decided to live in Scarborough, and we're 2 miles from Higgins Beach, and within 10 minutes of 3 or 4 other beaches. So it's been a great fit for just what we like to do, and the mountains are not too far away. So we found Maine's a great place if you like to do a lot of different things. It offers a lot of variety, and my favorite thing about Maine is just it's not crowded. You don't have the crowds of a lot of other places, so
Hmm.
you can go out and you can, sometimes you can enjoy an entire lake by yourself, ice skating, and not have to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get to enjoy the nature, not be surrounded by crowds of people.
Hmm.
That's kind of a unique feature of Maine too. So.
Hmm. Yeah, it is so varied, and I know you're a big mountain biker as well. We've been out on a ride, and I heard about a porcupine story, a mountain biking porcupine story. And so I want to get this one from the horse's
Uh,
mouth. Tell me
it's
about this porcupine
it's
saga.
a good one. My kite surfing is not a very good cardiovascular workout, so I get my cardio from mountain biking. And the other thing you should know about me is I don't do gyms. I used to step foot in a gym. The last time I think was when I lived in Brooklyn, in the early years of marriage, and I went with my wife a few times, but I'm just not a gym guy. I got to be outside. I got to feel the air and just not. I just don't do gym. So I've taken up mountain biking just to get the cardio, and then I've really gotten into trail building as well. I actually enjoyed building trails as much as I like riding, but there's some local trails nearby in my house that I can ride to from my house, and we've been slowly building trails there. And the porcupine story is a fun one because I like to do night rides sometimes, especially in the we get to the winter months and we don't have daylight. You just get used to riding with a headlamp because it gets dark at 4:30 sometimes in the winter time. So riding with a headlamp is not an unusual thing, and so riding any hour of day isn't really a problem with the right gear. So we had returned from a trip to we visited my son out in Pittsburgh for his first year of college, and we went out for family weekend. And I had just eaten stuff all weekend and sat around, and I hadn't done any exercise. We came back late Sunday, and my everyone went to bed, and I was wound up and wired, and I decided to go for a night ride. And I have to say it was probably like 11 at night when I decided to make this call. So I went out, got out there probably about 11:30, started riding, and rode for about an hour or so, and I'm about to come back, and I'm riding along, come around a corner, and all of a sudden there's something in the middle of the trail, and it doesn't really move very fast, and I kind of I could either go right off into like this dark ravine, or I could go towards a tree, and I went towards the tree, and so did this porcupine, which I didn't know at the time was a porcupine, and he got pinned between my leg and the tree. And then, he scurried off, and I looked down at my leg, and there's just this like white swath of stuff sticking out of my leg, and I didn't register because I'd never hit a porcupine before. Eventually, I figured out that I'd been quilled,
Wow.
and at this point, it's about 1 in the morning or so, and everyone's asleep. And again, I don't know anything about porcupines. I'm kind of looking at my leg, and I'm like, I need to get home as quickly as I can because I don't know if I'm going to like go into shock or it's going to go
Yeah.
numb. And so I make my way
Are they
home. And,
venomous?
yeah, I have no idea. And so I make my way home, and I'm deciding whether to go to the ER or wake my wife up. And eventually, I woke my wife up and said I hit a porcupine, and she was very confused. Eventually, we got out the pliers, and um, I think I ended up having 164 quills in my leg.
Oh my
And
God.
they are one of the most painful things I've ever had pulled out of my leg. But apparently, it's just cut off the tips and it makes them easier to pull out. We didn't know that, so my wife was yanking them out at 2 in the morning. I'm biting on a
Oh,
towel. I was doing shots of whiskey and biting on a towel and just sobbing because it was the most painful thing in the world as she yanked each one of these things out. It was
wow.
really awful. But
Just
she got them all
caveman
out.
status. Just grin and bear it. She's got
Yeah.
the pliers.
Oh yeah,
You're
it was
hitting the
hideous.
whiskey.
Got them all out, and at this point, it's like 2:30 in the morning. She's like, "I need to go to bed. I got to work in the morning." And I get in the bathtub to soak, just to get all the whatever residue off. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd had several shots of whiskey at this point, and about a half hour goes by, and I think I'd fallen asleep in the tub, and my wife came down to check on me, and I'm kind of surprised she didn't just push my head under and be like, "Oh, he accidentally drowned."
Ah.
uh, but it makes for a fun story of the porcupine quills. But it was I don't
Oh
recommend
man,
it.
I can't even
I think I'm
imagine.
probably one of the few cases of people being quilled. I know dogs get quilled all the time, but I don't think it's pretty unusual for people.
Yeah, that's the classic, and they're like hooked too, right? Like a fish hook. So like
Yeah, and I
once
guess
they're
if
in, they're like
you cut
harder
off
to pull back out.
yeah, and if you cut off the tops, I guess it releases some sort of pressure on that little barb that's in there, and they're easy to pull out. But we found that out after the fact. But,
Oof, so brutal.
don't recommend running into
160
porcupines.
quill, and everyone, here we go, yank, here we go, yank. An hour later, oh, you're just in agony. Yeah, shots of whiskey. You fell asleep in the bathtub, right?
Well, I was pretty traumatized at that point.
Oh, I can imagine.
But
Man,
yeah, no,
what a journey. That's really cool. And so I got to ask you, I'm so curious to know that you said you were in New York during 9/11. And
yeah.
I'm kind of fascinated by 9/11. So, and I've never met someone who's been there. Tell me
No,
your experience.
I've told the story many times. So I got my first job out of school in Manhattan. I had a window office on the 15th floor of Tower 2 in 2000. As a naval architect, it was kind of like, I'd kind of made it. I got through school and I got a dream job and just got married and I started out this job. And the morning of 9/11, I was running a little bit late that day, and you come into that complex in the subway, and I was walking to the elevator when the first plane hit, and some of the ceiling tiles kind of fell out of the ceiling, and there was kind of some commotion. People kind of made some, kind of light screens, but nobody knew what was going on. But something was off. And I think it was in '92. There had been an attempted bombing of the Trade Center, so people kind of had their radar up to begin with.
Yeah.
So at that point, I didn't know what was going on. I decided to go outside and check out what was happening. Just had like a bad sense of things, and I went out between the two towers. It was a plaza that I used to go eat lunch. We used to have free concerts all the time. And I looked up and you could see that, smoke billowing from the first tower. And I was on the opposite side of where the plane had hit. So again, we thought maybe a Cessna or a small plane had hit the tower. Nobody knew what was going on. So I was there for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And unfortunately, that's people started jumping from the Tower 1 to just so they had no option. And people were falling and landing in front of me, not, 50 yards away from me. And that was pretty awful and intense. And I was like, I got to get out of here. This is not, this was, didn't jive well with me. And so I went away. I went to the other side of the building and I was about to go into my tower 2. And I was like, something's not right. I'm just going to, wait here for a minute. And I decided, I was trying to call my wife. Back then we had flip phones.
When you said wait here, you're in the lobby of Tower 2.
No, I was just outside on the street.
Outside.
I was trying to decide what to do. I was trying to call my wife. Couldn't get a signal because a lot of people were making phone calls at the time. I decided to go across the street to, there's a little deli, Greek deli that we used to grab lunch from. And we kind of knew the owner. And I said, hey, can I use your landline? And I tried calling my wife. Couldn't get through. Phones were again, the cell phone technology was pretty poor back then. So I couldn't get through. Mm-hmm. So then at that point, I'm like, I'm just going to go, in my office and see what's going on. And I started walking across the street. And then that's when the second plane literally flew over my head and hit the building. I was there and it still feels like I was in some sort of surreal movie, but I could feel the heat from the explosion and debris was flying everywhere. And at that point, everyone around knew something really bad was happening and everyone just started running. And so I was able to run up to Broadway, I ran down to the subway, hopped on a subway train, and I was able to get out of Manhattan about halfway into Brooklyn. And then they kicked everyone off the trains because they didn't know if there were bombs in the trains at that point. And so then I was able to walk the rest of the way home. But all my coworkers got out. And then we knew some guys in Tower 1. I think they worked for the American Bureau of Shipping. And they were in the 70s, I believe. And they actually had one of the landing gear come through the ceiling of their office. And they all got out. So it was kind of amazing how many people, survived. I think if I look back at, if it had been 30 minutes later, the carnage would have been tenfold. Just really a miracle that a lot of people were running late and just not that many people, shockingly not that many people were injured, but it could have been way worse. but yeah, no, I got away from that, and it was kind of a surreal time in New York City. Everything was really quiet. We lived in Brooklyn, and I remember like pieces of paper floating through and landing on the street, and it was like a burnt shard of a spreadsheet from somebody's desk, had blown over from Manhattan. And there was this awful smell in the air, but it was just a really good time because everyone in New York City came together, and neighbors were checking on me, and everyone was just super kind and looking out for each other. And it was a really special time with people really looking out for each other. So that was really positive. 6 months of the day, I woke up, started bawling, didn't want to leave the apartment. Totally had PTSD from watching people
Wow.
hit the ground like that. It's not, I totally get why these guys coming back from war zones deal with this stuff because you're just not meant to see that kind of death. It's just, it messes with your mind. And so I went on meds and suffered a little bit with anxiety. I still have a little bit of anxiety from that, but I'm just thankful that I came out of it.
What a thing to have like been a part of. I can't even imagine. I've seen a few deaths in a couple different ways. I was on mountain rescue in Aspen, Colorado for a long time and kind of did some like avalanche body recovery kind of things. And I had a girlfriend once, this was in Denver years ago. She had a brother with a congenital heart disease, and he wasn't supposed to live past 5 years old or something. He was born with this heart disease and actually lived quite a long time until age 25 or something like that. And he had, I want to say, like a stroke while driving his car and got into a pretty severe car wreck. And he had stipulated, I believe, in his will that like, the DNR, like, do not resuscitate. I don't want to be a vegetable if I'm in a coma. You have my blessing to pull the plug kind of thing. And so the only similar death trauma story that I have is going to the hospital with my girlfriend at the time and her family, the brother's wife, the father, and kind of all being there and like holding hands and having them pull the plug and like watch the man die essentially and like leave. And I remember really feeling this like energetic aura, this like lifting of the space. And it doesn't feel right, or like you said, the surrealness of it, almost like this really happened. I'm really here. This isn't a TV show. I can't even fathom seeing the people jumping. And wow, that's a story that you'll have forever. I hope it doesn't bring up too much trauma for you. It's amazing for me to hear. I think it's just, wow, what a blessing to be present. That's for sure. Well, with that, man, I think that's a wonderful place to wrap it up. Thanks for your time and conversation. We're going to drop some links in the show notes for mainkite.com. And Scott, thanks for being here.